sentient beings may attain Buddhahood. From my heart I take refuge in the three jewels. In order that all sentient beings may attain Buddhahood, from my heart I take refuge in the three jewels. In order that all sentient beings may attain Buddhahood, from my heart I take refuge in the three jewels. Whatever the virtues of the many fields of knowledge, all are steps on the path of omniscience. May these arise in the clear mirror of intellect. O Manjushri, please accomplish this. Good evening, welcome. Welcome to our sojourn into the world of Mahamudra deviations and strains tonight. How to go wrong in your Mahamudra practice 101. Sounds very familiar, the readings for tonight. It's nice having not that much reading, right? Simple, easy, quantity. So we're on page 1. No, let's try these things. Oh, yeah, 355. There you go. So this is part C of the chapter of the text called Sustaining Mahamudra, I believe. That begins with Sustaining Mahamudra. On page 305, has 4 parts. The necessity of sustaining, the methods for sustaining, eliminating deviations and strains, and then part 4 is enhancement. And that was split into 3 chapters. The first 2 in sustaining, chapter 11, and this deviance and so forth in chapter 12, and then enhancements in chapter 13. Eliminating deviations and strains in meditation has 2 parts, beginning with the same thing, which has 2 sections, beginning with the 4 deviations, which has 2 parts, beginning with identifying the 4 deviations. Generally speaking, the explanations of each of the 4 deviations in relation to emptiness. All of the strains seem to have been in relation to nothing. Generally speaking, the explanations of each of the 4 deviations in relation to emptiness use the terms fundamental deviations for the deviations of leaving emptiness as a theoretical understanding, an abstract idea, and temporary deviations for the mistaken ways of cultivating experiences of emptiness. So the 4 deviations are divided into 2 types, fundamental and temporary. The 2 types of deviations from emptiness as the basic nature of noble objects are as follows. Which confused me because I couldn't tell, are these part of the fundamental or the temporary? But anyway, are as follows. Since emptiness is the basic nature of noble objects, we meditate on the inseparability of appearance and emptiness. You know, just as an aside, in the Sutrayana tradition, the Mahayana tradition, that's the main way of meditating on the emptiness of phenomena, right? It's the inseparability of emptiness and dependent origination. And that was the major presentation by a specific individual, number 2, Tsongkhapa, the progenitor of the now Gelugpa tradition. He wrote many texts on emptiness and dependent origination. That was his big deal. But it was focused on the emptiness of phenomena. Whereas here the meditation is focused on what? Exclusively focused on. Yeah, there you go. The thing that we think is in here, the mind, right? Because everything's mind. It's all about the emptiness of the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is empty luminosity, which is sort of sums up appearance in a sort of third turning type of way, right? Okay. Since emptiness is the basic nature of noble objects, we meditate on the inseparability of appearances and emptiness when we are ignorant of the way that emptiness and dependent origination are non-dual, which is called emptiness endowed with the most sublime of manifestations, which is a funny thing to say because emptiness and dependent origination is very much a second turning thing. And this phrase, emptiness endowed with the most sublime of manifestations, is totally a third turning phrase or idea or way of understanding or practicing. We may conclude that emptiness is only something primordially non-existent. I think there's a hint in there that that's wrong, right? We may conclude a total absence, never covered by false or positive qualities. Covered is an odd term. Never covered by false. So we may conclude that emptiness is only something primordially existent, a total absence, never covered by false or positive qualities. The implication being that emptiness is covered by false and positive qualities, I guess, and therefore we dismiss the validity of the causes and results of virtue and evil. First mistake. Or we may deviate from the basic nature, which is that phenomena are primordially pure, primordially liberated, and so forth, and carried away by our assessment of such one-dimensional emptiness, not develop proficiency with dependent origination on the conventional level. Those are the fundamental deviations. Wow. So we may deviate from the basic nature, presumably the basic nature being the inseparability of emptiness and appearance, or dependent origination, or luminosity, emptiness, endowed with the most sublime of manifestations, which is that phenomena are primordially pure, primordially beyond pure and impure, or defiled and enlightened, primordially enlightened, already liberated, primordially liberated, and so forth, and carried away by our assessment of what such one-dimensional emptiness, that emptiness as a mere absence, not develop proficiency with dependent origination on the conventional level, implying that by making this error, we only develop proficiency with dependent origination on the ultimate level. And Vajrayana is all about bringing together emptiness and dependent origination on the relative level, right? Bringing together relative manifestation and the true nature of reality on the relative level. So then on the basis of study and reflection, the first two of the three prajnas, we may correctly understand emptiness, and in parentheses, the object of meditation. Have we had emptiness as the object of meditation so far? We may correctly understand emptiness the object of meditation as an abstract idea, as an intellectual object for ourselves. So we may correctly realize the general concept of emptiness. We may also know, based on study and reflection, we develop a conceptual understanding of emptiness, right? We may also know how to explain that to others, or that approach. But that basic nature of emptiness becomes like something that exists somewhere else. For one, it exists. Something that exists somewhere else. Three mistakes, right? A thing that exists somewhere else. We don't recognize that abiding nature right within our own awareness, which was sort of what I was getting at earlier, talking about emptiness, independent origination, and the second turning as focused on phenomena in general, or the variety of phenomena, whereas in this tradition it's focused very directly on the nature of mind within our own awareness, and aren't confident about it right within our own experience because we feel like it's somewhere else. This is the temporary deviation. So the last paragraph was fundamental, and this is the temporary. Okay. Deviating from emptiness as the path is twofold. So the implication of that sentence is that the prior deviations were deviating from emptiness as the ground. I think. Right? Okay, deviating from emptiness as the path is twofold. Since emptiness is the path, we meditate on the inseparability of the path and fruition. Since ground, path, and fruition are inseparable and complete as one nature in the abiding state of our mind, the resultant Dharmakaya exists spontaneously as the innate quality of mind's nature. So what is the difference between the resultant Dharmakaya and the causal Dharmakaya? That's an interesting term, right? The resultant Dharmakaya. We haven't really seen this before, have we? The resultant Dharmakaya, so let's see. Since ground, path, fruition are inseparable and complete as one nature in the abiding state of our mind, the resultant Dharmakaya exists spontaneously as an innate quality of mind's nature. In other words, the fully blown Dharmakaya, the fully actualized or enlightened Dharmakaya, as opposed to the potential Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya has a potential. So that fully actualized Dharmakaya exists as an innate quality of mind's nature, spontaneously, like without cause, without being born, without being produced. Not realizing that, we believe that by taking emptiness as the path and meditating upon it now, we will attain something else as the result. Buddhahood with its 3 kayas and 5 wisdoms. That is the fundamental deviation. So we're back to the fundamental deviation. Now we have a fundamental deviation of the path, I guess. It's misunderstanding the path as if it's doing something, right? As if it's bringing about something that didn't exist before. Although the practice of meditation on the abiding state just as it is what we are to sustain. The practice of meditation on the abiding state just as it is what we're to sustain. Not being confident in that, we hope for something else, or something superior to that, and we go looking elsewhere. I think he's talking about, like, in our meditation, thinking that our current our mind state of, like, maybe being filled with dullness or agitation or distraction and so forth is not the real thing. Or we manufacture something superior in the abiding state of the mind's nature. We come up with an idea of what our mind should be like as the resultant mind of our meditation, such as bliss, clarity, or non-conceptuality, those three qualities, and we meditate on that instead. So we manufacture those three qualities and meditate on those. Those are the temporary deviations. Once again, deviating from emptiness as the remedy is twofold as follows. So first, like if we go back to the page before, the first paragraph, generally speaking, the explanations of each of the four deviations in relation to emptiness use the terms fundamental deviations for deviations of leaving emptiness as a theoretical understanding, abstract idea, and temporary for the mistaken ways of cultivating experiences. So we're going through four types of deviations, and for each of them there's a fundamental deviation, fundamental quality of that deviation, that is how that deviation relates to the ground, I think, and then how that deviation relates to the path, which is the temporary, I think. And then the two types of deviation from emptiness as the basic nature of noble objects are as follows. So the two types are the fundamental and the temporary deviations, right, are as follows. First we have the fundamental, and then we had the temporary. And so that was a deviation from emptiness as the basic nature of noble objects. And then the second one, deviating from emptiness as the path, as fundamental and temporary. And then the third one, which we haven't gone through yet, at the bottom of 356, is deviating from emptiness as the remedy. So the nature of noble objects, the path, the remedy, and just peeking ahead, just to complete the four, is deviating from emptiness as the seal. So those are the four deviations about emptiness, as the nature of noble objects, as the path, the basic nature of noble objects, the path, and the remedy, and the seal. Okay, and each of them has a fundamental and a temporary. So again, bottom of 356, deviating from emptiness as the remedy is twofold, as follows. So first is the fundamental. Since emptiness is the remedy, we meditate on the inseparability of the factors to be abandoned and their remedy. The basic nature of the mental afflictions, what are to be abandoned, is itself the remedy, emptiness. That makes sense. Not understanding that when we are aware of that very nature, emptiness, mental afflictions, what are to be abandoned, arise as wisdom, the remedy. We take mental afflictions and emptiness to be different things. So mistaking mental afflictions for being a problem that have to be remedied with emptiness, instead of seeing that mental afflictions arise as wisdom. We reject mental afflictions thereby, and as their remedy we meditate on emptiness, something separate. Right? We say, these are no good, I gotta meditate on something positive. Or we work out that those mental afflictions do not inherently exist and rest in that. Work out is a technical phrase. We work out. I guess we somehow, like, using one of the logics or whatever, we just somehow convince ourselves that mental afflictions are inherently non-existent. And then we rest in that absence. Those are the fundamental deviations in terms of emptiness as the remedy. Temporary. When thoughts related to unsettling circumstances arise, we do not sustain the mindfulness that recognizes their nature. Instead, we either destroy the thought itself or we draw it in and place it within our meditation. Those are the temporary deviations. So we've seen this one before. in, I can't remember what, maybe it was the Insight Vipassana chapter. This idea of like different ways of, incorrect ways of dealing with thoughts, as if thoughts are a problem, and like having to do something with thoughts in order to experience the correct state of mind. So in this case, we destroy thoughts with emptiness. You know, we zap them with the idea of emptiness, or we draw them in and place them within our meditation. We sort of bring thoughts in, and in like a conceptual way, I guess, and try to, um, sort of like keep your friends close and your enemies closer, or something like that. You bring the thoughts all the way into the center of your awareness. Those are temporary deviations. And the implication is what?
So it's a deviation to be mindful that you're thinking in your practice?
That's a good question. Say that again.
It's a deviation to be mindful of the fact that you're thinking during your practice?
So is that a statement or a question?
It's a question. I mean,
Okay, so
they're saying that the author is saying that's a deviation of that mindfulness, placing it in the like still being mindful of still being in samadhi, recognizing the thought is coming and going and not doing anything really, but just having it there. That that's a deviation.
okay, so that's the question.
Yeah.
Is just being mindful that there are thoughts a deviation? Cynthia.
Well, it seems like in this context, they have a higher bar for what mindfulness is to be doing with the thoughts, and that they're looking for mindfulness to be recognizing the nature of thoughts, not just seeing them coming and going.
Okay, so then there's a little bit of analysis happening. So there's thinking about the thinking.
I don't know. I'm not sure that there's a process or whether by this stage they're expecting that recognition to be kind of a more instantaneous.
Okay, so like it's a flash, more of a non. This is like we've already hit certainty, resting in certainty for enough times that now we just sort of flash on that thought, uh, 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 like, oh, emptiness just showed up.
That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know for sure if that's the case, but that's the way I'm reading it. Derek, what do you
I
think?
think I think so. I mean, the first sentence he says, when thoughts related to unsettling circumstances arise, we do not sustain the mindfulness that recognizes their nature. So I think that sentence means we should just sustain the mindfulness that recognizes their nature. And then he says, instead, we destroy the thought itself. We feel we like our version of understanding their nature like disperses the thought instead of letting the thought be a vibrant display of empty luminosity, or we draw it in like that one's a little unclear. We draw it in and place it within our meditation. A little unclear. Eric.
Does that mean sort of like we're going to try to work with the thought somehow? I mean, maybe not necessarily conceptually, but somehow that it needs something
drawing
done with it.
drawing it
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We're gonna somehow like come face to it and like have a showdown with it or something. Yeah, that's a dig.
I was just thinking also that this is consistent with what we went through maybe last week or in the recent weeks about meditative equipoise and then post-meditative attainment, if that's the correct terminology, because it's as soon as what they talked about was you basically land in post-meditative attainment when you have lost that mindfulness that they're talking about here. Um, even if it's briefly. And if you regain it, then I guess if you regain that recognition, you get to post meditative attainment. Otherwise, you're just out of the practice altogether. But right, that's so. I think that that's what constitutes the equipoise is that ability to recognize the nature constantly.
Interesting. So the question is, does it need to actually shift to post meditative attainment?
I don't think it has. I don't think it has to. I may have said that slightly
Yeah.
wrong when I first started. I think it's if you are able to see thoughts and recognize them, you remain in equipoise. And if you miss, then that's when you go to post meditative attainment. And I think it's only post meditative attainment, if you then sort of bring back the recognition,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So it's like there's a little gap in
Subsequently,
your
yeah.
recognition.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So sustaining mindfulness that recognizes their nature is the key, right?
Right. So like all of this is really making more and more sense that of the phrase um, uh, pounding bone with rock.
Yeah, right. Over and over again, the same thing. Mindfulness that recognizes the nature, the abiding state. Each one of these, basically. Let's do the fourth one, then we'll come back to like the temporary deviations seem to be like the more helpful ones of like, what do you do in meditation? So fourthly, deviating from emptiness as the seal. So we should talk about the seal. What are we talking about when we talk about emptiness as the seal? Well, maybe
Well,
let's read through it and then come back.
Well,
Or
that's like as being everything's marked with emptiness. I think that's what the seal concept is.
that is generally the concept, yeah. Christopher, did I cut you off? Were you about to add something?
No, just that that's the ultimate Mahamudra,
The seal.
the seal.
Deviating from emptiness as the ultimate Mahamudra. Something like that. Okay. It's twofold. So this has two problems. This is the fundamental deviations. One, since emptiness is the seal, we meditate on the inseparability of method and wisdom. Being unaware that emptiness is the very essence of phenomena, those involving reference points and those that do not. First, we take a virtuous quality such as generosity to involve reference point in the characterization process. Then we dissect it using reasoning. Or, so that seems to be one of the two folds that this first sentence introduced. So, it says, since emptiness is the seal, we meditate on the inseparability of method and wisdom. Method being a shorthand term generally for virtuous qualities or activities, the first five of the six paramitas, or at least the first four, things like that. Or engagement with phenomena, with conventional reality is method, right? Or we intellectually fabricate its lack of inherent existence by reciting the Swabhava mantra or the like. Those are the fundamental deviations. Now, for those of you who don't yet do sadhana practice, you're not familiar with the activity of fabricating lack of inherent existence by reciting the Swabhava mantra. So, when you finish Nodro, and if you pursue the Kagyu path as laid out by Trungpa Rinpoche, you'll receive the Vajrayogini sadhana or empowerment, and then you'll practice that. And in that sadhana, over and over again, we dissolve into emptiness, and then we arise as Vajrayogini, and then we do stuff, and then we dissolve into emptiness. And each time you dissolve into emptiness, you use the Swabhava mantra. And this Swabhava mantra is common to all traditions. I've seen this in Nyingma and Gelugpa traditions. The Swabhava mantra as a way of dissolving into emptiness. And the mantra is Om Swabhava Shuddho Sarva Dharma Swabhava Shuddho Ham, which is in Sanskrit, so it doesn't mean anything to you, but it says Om Swabhava Shuddho, all dharmas are pure. Om Swabhava Shuddho Sarva Dharma Shuddho Ham. I am the purity of all dharmas, or something like that. Om Swabhava Shuddho Sarva Dharma Om Swabhava. Oh wait, Om Swabhava Shuddho. Om, the self nature, is Shuddho. Shuddho is pure. Swabhava is pure. Shuddho. Om Swabhava Shuddho. Sarva Dharma is all dharmas. Swabhava Shuddho. Sarva Dharma. Swabhava. The nature of all dharmas is pure. Something like that. But it doesn't say they're empty, interestingly, right? It's more like primordially pure. But anyway, it's the activity that he's talking about here of like intellectually fabricating this, like this idea. And when you do Vajrayogini practice or any other sadhana practice, then you'll have this dissolution and then re-arising phase. If it's important that you understand this, people get lost in like the visualization and the different deities and activities and the mudras and the mantras and all that fun stuff. But the most important part of any sadhana is the dissolution and arising. And if you understand the dissolution as if you're dissolving something that was real, then you've missed the whole point, right? So anyway, that's what he's saying here, that if we look at our thoughts and we say, okay, they're empty. However elaborate or unelaborate that conceptual process is, either way, it's not a correct way of experiencing our minds. So that's the fundamental deviations. So emptiness as the seal. Emptiness, so all phenomena are sealed with emptiness is the idea. So deviating in the way of understanding that fundamental principle. Secondly, while sustaining meditation, we may not keep to the proper sequence and not take whatever arises as the path. We may lose track of the proper sequence, which is to take whatever arises as the path. Instead, we create some past experience of emptiness and bring that to mind, thinking, this is real meditation. Right? So instead of experiencing whatever is happening in our meditation as our pristine, unadulterated, empty, luminous, natural abiding state mind, we think, oh, I used to be able to rest in a luminous, blissful state, and that's what I got to try to create. So obviously that is contrived. Or not taking post-meditative mental states as the path. First we are distracted and don't notice, and then we interrupt the discursiveness of thoughts with meditation, thinking that is meditation. It's really painful that he points out all these things that, isn't that what we all do? We run around mindlessly, and then we remember that we should be mindful, and we create this state of mindfulness. What else? If you're not mindful, how else are you going to come back to mindfulness? Than by interrupting the discursiveness of thoughts with meditation. In other words, if you stray, you've already messed up, I guess. So those are the temporary. So then just to scoot back real quickly through these, this the temporary ones. So on the top of, or in the middle-ish of 356, on the basis of study and reflection, we may correctly understand emptiness as an abstract idea, and we can understand it well enough to explain it to others, but it's become like something that exists somewhere else than our nature of our mind. Okay, so we have emptiness as an abstract idea. Then the second one, which starts skipping a paragraph, so it's although the practice of meditation on the abiding state just as it is what we are to sustain, we don't have confidence in it, and we hope for something else or something superior to that and go looking elsewhere. So that thirdly, on top of 357, when thoughts related to unsettling circumstances arise, we don't sustain the mindfulness that recognizes their nature. Instead, we feel like we have to do something to them. And then fourthly, while sustaining meditation, we may not realize that whatever arises is the path. Instead, we try to recreate some prior experience, both on the cushion and outside of the cushion. We try to give rise to or summon the meditative state, whatever. Anyway, so those illustrate the ways beings deviate in meditation. To the presentation of the methods for not deviating in those ways. Among those ways of deviating, the fundamental deviation from emptiness is the basic nature of noble objects. That was the first. Of the four is a very flawed, wrong view. Sarha declares, those who grasp at what doesn't exist are even more foolish. The quote seems to have been taken from a two-line quote, and we don't have the first line. That must have said
Is that the one about cows?
Probably, yeah. Like those who believe that things are real are like cows, but those who grasp at what doesn't exist are even more foolish. Or, the people who think that things are real are stupid like cows, but those who grasp it at emptiness are even more foolish. Chris, you're back in full clarity. You had dissolved into like some sort of Sambhogakaya state there. Nagarjuna teaches that to be a major nihilistic view by saying, if emptiness is seen incorrectly, those of little intelligence are ruined. He also states that its result is to be born in the negative states. Those who assert non-existence proceed to negative states. The exalted Gampopa teaches, even though you may not fixate on emptiness, the basic nature of noble objects, you may not have realized reality. Okay, we get the point. Splitting hairs. The other ways of deviating do not bring about that type of wrong view. That's interesting. So, of the four types of deviations, the first one has this is like the main deviation of not really understanding emptiness properly. The others are like using emptiness, or using the understanding of emptiness incorrectly. Since they do not lead to meditation that is conclusive about the abiding state, we should also avoid them, the other types. Not deviating from emptiness is the basic nature of noble objects. So that was the first of the four. We avoid this deviation by understanding the meaning of Mahamudra. Our basic nature is unborn. It does not exist as anything at all, since it is empty of any phenomena involving existence, non-existence, permanence, annihilation, truth, or falsity. And yet, its unimpeded radiance manifests as a variety of dependent arisings on the conventional level. Interestingly, when they say that our basic nature is an unimpeded radiance, they seem to always be okay with radiance as not being existent or non-existent, permanent or annihilated, truth or falsity, right? Radiance or luminosity or manifestation is the only thing that seems to be okay. I'm sort of making a joke out of this point, but right, it's like they say there's nothing at all except that there's this radiance.
But isn't it because the radiance is connate with emptiness that it is acceptable, right? I mean,
I guess, but it's sort of like, what does that mean that it's connate with emptiness? Eric?
I mean, isn't it like saying that there's energy in space?
Right,
And
and so
the
energy is okay.
yeah, it's like it's in a sense, yeah, energy and space exist, and we see all kinds of illusions that are kind of compounded of them or something. But to say that energy doesn't exist is kind of a form of nihilism or something.
But he just said that since the energy doesn't exist as anything, since it is empty of any phenomena involving existence or non-existence, so you've given a name to something that doesn't exist as anything.
The luminosity is giving it, that's a name of something that doesn't exist.
It seems to be, radiance, luminosity, energy.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't exist in the forms that we create, I guess.
It's sort of like they've defined a certain set of, like a certain way of describing or identifying phenomena as being incorrect, and then they've created a phenomena that doesn't fit in that category as being okay.
I don't, well, I don't know, but isn't this just, I mean, it's no different than us saying that all phenomena are empty. I mean, basically, it,
So so what is this unimpeded radiance?
well, doesn't
Does it
radiance include
exist?
everything that we've experienced on some level? Isn't that kind
But
of
does it exist or non-exist?
it doesn't inherently exist?
Aren't they sort of saying the question's irrelevant as to whether it exists or not? That only applies to illusion, so to speak.
Well, why not say, yet its unimpeded phenomena manifest?
And yet it's
They said since it's empty of any phenomena, why not? Is radiance not a phenomena? So I'm just trying to be devil's advocate, as they call
But
it.
doesn't the sentence go manifest as a variety of dependent arisings on the conventional level? Or does that,
Yeah,
so on a conventional level as opposed to, um, and the dependent arisings, that there's somehow the
but it seems like
cause and dependent.
it seems like the term and yet it's
Yeah.
and yet that's like there's an exception.
I, I I understand what you're saying, but I just think this is no different than, I mean, first of all, that first sentence, it's empty of any phenomena that involve existence, non-existence. In other words, it's saying it it's empty of any existent phenomena, and then it proceeds to just apply the term radiance for what I think is still the same thing, non-existent phenomena.
No, this is involving existence or non-existence. So
Right.
it's not an existent
I,
phenomena or a non-existent phenomena. So what
right.
kind of phenomena is it then?
It's beyond any kind of
I'm just
whatever.
trying to be difficult. It's
I know
beyond
you are.
So we say that there nothing exists as this or that or this or that, and then we say, but there is something that's not those. Mary Beth.
Isn't that our Buddha nature?
That's a good name for it. That's the exception, right? We give a name to the exception. Anyway, I'm just trying to be difficult here, contrarian. But yes, all of you are correct. I guess what maybe what if you interpret my um, babble here in some way as positive, I'm trying to make sure that we don't make radiance into something, right? I guess. Anyway, by understanding that emptiness is the core of dependent origination, which for me is a weird term, like that dependent origination has a core. So everything outside of that core is not empty. Or is it
I think it just
core?
means it's a way of saying the essence that dependent origination can be because of emptiness. It's what they always say that,
Dependent origination is the nature of
yeah,
emptiness.
yeah. Or emptiness is
So,
the nature of dependent origination. It's
so
whatever.
then emptiness exists
Uh,
because
I don't think so.
it has a nature and it performs a function. It's the core of dependent. I'm giving you a hard time.
Right, but I think it's like sorry, I just lost my thread there. That um, oh gosh, yeah, I really did. I can't
Anyway,
think.
we all know what he's saying, but it's a little bit odd to put it in words, maybe. We do not deviate from emptiness as the basic nature of knowable objects, as the entirety of knowable objects. It's not like just the nature, it's like the entirety, right? The fundamental treatise on the middle, which is Nagarjuna's text, sums this up. There is no existent phenomena that is not dependently originated. Therefore, there is no existent phenomena that is not empty. He actually says it differently, right? He doesn't say there's a radiance. He doesn't say that emptiness is the core of dependent origin,
I often they say that without emptiness you couldn't have manifestation, or you couldn't have like there'd be no way that anything any um,
How much emptiness do you need to have appearance?
I guess 100%, right?
Equal measures.
Right.
The commentary on Bodhicitta by Nagarjuna adds the
Like,
conventional is taught to be empty. Oh, sorry, Rob.
I'm sorry. I, I'm I'm getting the sense that yeah, emptiness is the only thing that can get out of its own way, and
It's a thing. It's a thing.
therefore appearances arise.
It's a thing, then.
Well, no, it just gets out of its own way.
You said it's
It's
the only thing.
well, okay, yeah, but that's because I'm a dualistic person and I have to talk about it as a subject and
You're
an
not a
object.
dualistic
But
person. There is no such thing. The conventional is thought to be emptiness, and emptiness itself is the conventional. There's a lot of conventions in Buddhism. Not deviating from emptiness as the path. So there was the basic nature, so the ground, now the path. By knowing that Mahamudra, which, by the way, like in the last part, not deviating from emptiness is the basic nature of noble objects, we avoid this deviation by understanding the meaning of Mahamudra. He doesn't give the meaning of Mahamudra directly, but the next sentence, I think, expresses it. Our
Well, I think the
basic
whole
nature,
paragraph sort of expresses it because he's
our basic nature is unborn,
emptiness and radiance conate, isn't that?
inseparable. That is the idea. So not deviating from emptiness is the path. By knowing that Mahamudra, the nature of ordinary mind, is the governing principle of all phenomena related to the ground, path, fruition, and so forth, or or that it is the very essence, we do not deviate from emptiness as the path. The great Brahman declares, with mind inquire into mind for this intrinsic wisdom, the one taste of the bhumis, paths, and Buddhahood. Meditate on wisdom, self-arisen and inconceivable, and you meditate on all the results. The result is unobstructed, present from the start within yourself. There's no need to be caught up in remedies with hopes and fears. Aryadeva, who is Nagarjuna's main sidekick, explains, one entity has the essence of all entities. All entities have the essence of one entity. The exalted Gampopa says, know right now that this clarity emptiness, the essence of reflexive awareness, is the Dharmakaya. Know right now that your mind, pure and beginningless, is the result. Ma, the expanse of the precious mind at the time of being the cause, it is the actual result. Thirdly, not deviating from emptiness as the remedy. When we recognize that all phenomena are of one nature and the natural expression of intrinsic Mahamudra, we understand the nature of conateness, the equal taste of mental afflictions, what are to be abandoned, and wisdom, the remedy. And thus we do not deviate from emptiness as the remedy. The two-part, which is the common way of referring to the Hayavajra Tantra, teaches there is not the slightest difference between the nature of pure wisdom and the thoughts of samsara. Samsara is anger and the rest. The dharmata of those is nirvana. Nagarjuna says samsara is not even slightly different from samsara, from nirvana. Sorry. Maitripa observes, mental afflictions are great wisdom. So, not deviating from emptiness as the seal is the fourth one through understanding that intrinsic Mahamudra is the governing principle of all phenomena. We know the reason that the basic nature of all the roots of virtue, those that involve characteristics and so on, is never anything other than emptiness, which is naturally pure. All phenomena are sealed. Subsequently, we will not deviate into sealing with an emptiness that is conceptually contrived by an individual person. That's interesting. Virupa says, all dualistic appearances and characteristics, happiness, sadness, and the rest, are the display of intrinsic Mahamudra, Dharmata. In other words, those two are synonymous. Since that display is neither real nor permanent, it never goes beyond the seal of emptiness, the abiding state. There we go. It never leaves emptiness. There's no phenomena, including radiance, that ever leaves emptiness. The abiding state. The Shawara states, all karmic formations are primordially the Dharmadhatu. Karmic formations, samskaras, right? In the 12 nidanas, it's the second nidana, ignorance, samskara, consciousness, something like that. Maitripa explains, once this is realized, all that can possibly appear is Mahamudra, the great pervasive infinite Dharmakaya. Furthermore, the exalted Gampopa teaches, experience can deviate from realization, and realization can deviate into experience. That's different. Experience can deviate from realization, and realization can deviate into experiences presented as in a pejorative light here, right?
But that's weird because that don't they generally say that realization is non, um, like genuine realization, there's no going back. And this seems like it's saying the last half of that seems like it's saying something different than that.
It sure does. It sure does. Let's see, does the footnote have a comment on the point you raise? Because, yeah, 1224, it's a lot of footnotes. And no, it lists the source, the
As
esoteric
usual.
instructions illuminating Mahamudra. Yeah. No, that's a good point. The first occurs when using specialized techniques such as those of breath control. We meditate on the essence of mind itself, and the positive experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality arise. We have confidence in those and take them to be sublime, thinking there can be nothing higher. We continue to practice while fixating on those experiences. So that's experience can deviate from realization, where we think that those experiences of bliss, luminosity, non-conceptual bliss, clarity, non-conceptuality are the real McCoy. The latter, realization deviating into experience, occurs when, on the basis of our Guru's blessings, we realize that the essence of mind does not exist as anything and cannot be identified. Within such realization, experiences of bliss, clarity, and so forth can naturally arise. If they do and we are pleased, or if they don't and we are unhappy, we may direct our efforts towards them and rest our mind there instead. So either way, trying to create experiences of any type is a deviation from realization of the basic nature of the abiding state of the mind, which is the same as the abiding state of
Yeah,
reality.
I guess what's happening here is that what they're referring to as realization here is not like an ultimate realization, I think.
Right, right. It's not the unchanging
Right,
realization.
right.
It's realizing like earlier when we had realizing the nature of thoughts. Uh, exactly. Okay. The exalted Drikongpa, the progenitor of the Drikung Kagyu, second largest Kagyu school, says, Jigchen Sumgun, in samadhi, bliss and clarity are sometimes present and sometimes not. If we meditate with the hope they will come, we're like children gazing at a rainbow which grows fainter and fainter until it finally disappears. Oh, interestingly, he says in samadhi, bliss and clarity come and go, as opposed to like saying samadhi, and samadhi, that means bliss and clarity are always present. In this context, a certain person, certain person number one, Sakya Pandita, the Sakya Pandita says, the thought, I will abandon the four deviations, is not Mahamudra. But if we don't have that thought, we can't abandon them. If we could give them up without that thought, why would not Mahamudra arise effortlessly in all sentient beings, even those who have no idea of that thought? Therefore, whatever is Mahamudra has no deviations and strains. If it does, it's not Mahamudra. That statement reflects nothing more than his desire to say something critical, nothing more than his tendency to be a pain in the butt. We may ask, why is he wrong? Because he is. The previously cited quotation from Maitribha, his statement, thoughts free in themselves are great wisdom, explain the context in which thoughts are Mahamudra when the suchness of thoughts is recognized. i.e. realized. Here, as a general matter, it is not ascertained that the usual sense of the thought, I will avoid the deviations, is itself Mahamudra. Here, as a general matter, it is not asserted that the usual sense of the thought is Mahamudra. Only the unusual sense of that thought, meaning the essence of thoughts, when the suchness of thoughts is recognized. Sakya Pandita's statements are just what he insists upon saying. If the absence of thoughts, non-conceptuality, is unable to relinquish what is to be abandoned, the following citations would be incorrect. So in other words, the experience of non-conceptuality is able to relinquish what is to be abandoned, as the following citations explain. First, from the Maitreya's Ornament of Mahayana Sutras, the power of non-conceptual wisdom of the wise continuously extends to all equally, eliminating the tangled mass of their flaws, just as the strong antidote neutralizes poison. So the realization of non-conceptuality extends to all equally and eliminates the tangled mass of flaws, just like a strong antidote. Shantideva's entrance to the Bodhisattva's way of life observes emptiness as the remedy for the darkness of the afflictive and cognitive obscurations, these being the two obscurations to enlightenment. Those who wish to attain omniscience quickly should meditate on emptiness. And if the absence of thoughts, non-conceptuality, is unable to relinquish what is to be abandoned, it means that all meditation on non-conceptual wisdom would be pointless, since it could not relinquish the objects to be abandoned. So, we have this interesting part, one, if not the most interesting part of this section, is this phrase, the absence of thoughts, which our translator is glossing as non-conceptuality, because we've seen that thoughts are not a problem because their essence is empty luminosity, right? So we don't need the absence of thoughts. So she's interpreting that as non-conceptuality, right?
But I think
What do you make
sometimes
of
they
that?
do define non-conceptuality differently, don't they?
As what?
Oh gosh, I read something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't. I thought I read something on this even recently that it's not quite as. It seems like it's not quite as simple as that. It's
As simple as what?
of just presence or absence of thought.
No, totally. I think that's why she's putting that in there, because she's saying it doesn't matter whether there are thoughts or not. It matters whether we concretize thoughts by not realizing or recognizing their nature, right? I think that's why she's putting that in there, because otherwise it's emphasizing not to have thoughts, which is totally different than what the author's been doing for hundreds of pages.
Yeah, I guess somehow I was surprised also that she put it that way because I don't quite.
We just like went through all these things where thoughts are not a problem.
Yeah, that I totally understand. I just the equation of these two, it
Yeah, yeah,
seems weird. Yeah, I'm not sure.
yeah. Not the implication is that non-conceptuality equals the absence of thoughts, which is not correct, right?
No,
That's it
because
seems, yeah.
we cognize all the time without discursive thinking.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, we do it all the time.
Exactly. So let's see. And if the absence of thoughts, i.e., or really non-conceptuality, is unable to relinquish what is to be abandoned, it means that all meditation on non-conceptual wisdom would be pointless. And we've seen that meditation on non-conceptual wisdom is the essence of Mahamudra practice, would be pointless, since it could not relinquish the objects to be abandoned. It is also laughable to suggest that sentient beings don't have thoughts, which is what we just talked about, right? We're all supposed to laugh, right? And by saying whatever is Mahamudra doesn't have deviations and strains, by saying whatever is Mahamudra doesn't have deviations and strains, he refutes his own statement elsewhere. The fool's meditation on Mahamudra usually is a cause for being born as an animal. Because he's pointing out in that statement that Mahamudra has deviations and strains. Furthermore, if no deviations and strains can occur in Mahamudra, applying the reasoning of equivalency means that it would be impossible to deviate from or err in relation to the bhumis and paths. In that case, many more contradictions with the scriptures and reasonings would follow. I think meaning that the scriptures and reasonings over and over again talk about deviations and errors. Okay, so those are the four deviants. Now we talk about the three stray ones, three strays, eliminating the three strays. Yeah, there's one of the strays. Cynthia has one in her hands there. Is that cat a stray?
He
That's
was a
okay. We
rescued
don't.
cat, so yes, he was a stray,
Okay, we have to
a
eliminate him.
kitten.
If there were a cat, you could eliminate him, but since there is no cat, you can't eliminate him. Okay, eliminating the strains has three parts. The explanation of specific instances of experiences that are strains is the first part. Broadly speaking, when we cultivate meditation without letting it become routine, that's an interesting statement, isn't it? Meditation without it becoming routine. Don't we keep saying, like, make meditation a routine?
Well, not anymore. Now we're supposed to make non-meditation the routine, right?
Right, and we're supposed to interrupt our meditation. Whenever it gets going good, you stop it. But when we cultivate meditation without letting it become routine and distinguish between brilliant states of mind and sullied ones, all kinds of experiences can arise in our mind. In particular, it is explained that many wonderful types of experiences can occur for practitioners with an excellent orientation in terms of their channels, winds, and so forth. Sounds like we're talking about sailors or something, right? For those who rely on specialized techniques such as breath control, and for the few whose great diligence in meditation is not interrupted by distraction and laziness. Yeah, the few. Show me one of them. Um, when various latent tendencies of karma and mental afflictions are activated, objects normally appearing for the six modes of consciousness appear as mental objects. That's that sentence, he's leading up to like a description of how to one of the strains or something, right? But this notion that our experience of the objects of our cognitions, of our six consciousnesses, are caused by karma and mental afflictions, the activation of karma and mental afflictions. Everything that we experience is the result of the activation of karma and mental afflictions. That's a very different way of viewing the world. There may appear many different kinds of objects for the five physical senses, such as visual experiences of forms, auditory experiences of sounds, olfactory experiences of smells, and the like. And there's an endless variety of thoughts that can arise, like waves on water. But those who vacillate between meditating and being seduced by appearances will only have a tiny bit of experiences. That's right. Since it is clear that not all people are the same. Nice one. The specific experiences they have won't be the same. Nevertheless, now I will draw from teachings that summarize experiences into three types. Everybody's different, but there's a tendency to have three similar types of experiences: blissful or pleasurable experiences. Your body may be pervaded by bliss or pleasure. So now we launch into these exalted experiences that might be foreign for most of us, including myself, and seem a bit over the top, but such as they are. Objects you touch may arouse bliss. You may feel so blissful you can't tell whether you have a body or not. Your mental joy may cause you to laugh. You may be at ease, mentally, and all appearances might seem delightful. The bliss or pleasure of simply not knowing whether it's day or night may fill your body and mind stream. This reminds me of Khenpo Tsogyam Gyaltsen, that he seemed to be in this experience. Experiences of clarity. Your mind may sparkle like a crystal. You may have many different clear visions. You may have the sense that you can see objects both near and far, even at night. You may experience visual appearances in meditation with characteristics you can actually touch and see. You can have experiences of illumination similar to that of radiant light. You might also think you have the supercognitive ability of knowing other people's minds, although some explain empty forms that are latent tendencies to be part of the experience of emptiness. It seems better to consider those to be experiences of clarity. That's a classification issue of how to classify the certain type of experience. Thirdly, experiences of non-conceptuality. You may have the perception that all animate and inanimate things are empty. Appearing objects, forms, sounds, and so forth can seem amorphous and vague. You might have the sense that they don't exist, that you and all appearances are expressions of emptiness, experiences of such utter emptiness that even the subtlest thoughts have dissolved, may occur like a clear, open sky. Some assert that once we have received the blessing of the three Vajras presumably being the Vajra body, speech, and mind of the enlightened ones, something like that, experiences and signs arise in our three doors, body, speech, and mind, as harbingers of realizing the abiding state. It is said, once the intrinsic abiding state manifests just a bit, concordant experiences arise in dreams, because the profound abiding state, the nature of the four Vajras, presumably being the three Vajras being a way of making body, speech, and mind into Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya, and the four being the addition of Svabhavakakaya, maybe, is the nature of all manifestations. Because the profound abiding state, the nature of the four Vajras, is the nature of all manifestations. When Vajrabody has blessed your body, many different physical manifestations will occur naturally, such as trembling, shaking, floating, moving, jumping, and running. Floating is one of the more interesting possibilities. When Vajra speech has blessed your speech, many different verbal expressions will occur naturally, such as discoursing, laughing, crying, wailing, and shouting. How do you know somebody's not just like going crazy? When Vajra mind has blessed your mind, supreme samadhi and supercognitions develop. Although there are many such explanations, and even though it is possible that such experiences will occur for a few due to their practice of breath control and the interdependence of their channels and winds, they will not happen for everyone. In this practice tradition, those experiences are explained by categorizing them as being either experiences of just shamatha, which is often the case, or experiences connected to shamatha and vipassana, or experiences intrinsic to realizations. The exalted Gampopa teaches the experiences of stillness are as follows. Using the techniques of the path of method, winds enter the avaduti. So the path of method is the path of the inner yogas, working with the inner energies of the winds, the essences, and prana, nadi, and bindu. Prana, the winds, nadi are the channels, and then the bindus, the essences, such as the six dharmas of Naropa, the inner heat and luminosity, dream, and clear light, yogas in particular. The winds may enter the avaduti. The avaduti is the central channel that extends from the base, below the base of the spine, to the top of the fontanelle. And when the winds enter there, the force of which generates bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality. So this is a common description that these experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-conceptuality occur because the winds enter into or abide even close to the bottom open entrance of the avaduti. Bliss is a defiled bliss that spreads throughout your body and mind. Clarity is your experience of that. Non-conceptuality is the expanding of non-conceptual samadhi without mindfulness. So Gampopa is sort of talking about these as lesser experiences, not really exalted, right? He says bliss is a defiled bliss and so forth. He also says the force of the winds entering the avaduti result in signs such as the 8 benefits or the 5 signs. Not sure exactly what those are. But if you remember, if you're familiar rather with the biography of Gampopa, he is sent off to meditate. He's given the instructions by Milarepa, and he's set off to meditate. And he has these wild experiences, right? And he comes back and relates them to Milarepa. And Milarepa's like, oh, you're eating too many like sweets or something. You're eating too many carbohydrates, or you're not sleeping enough, or you should sleep on your right. You know, like he gives them these like very matter of fact like responses as like, this is no big deal, and it's just because you're doing these practices slightly incorrectly, and you need to tweak it a little bit. But he has all these wild experiences of the inner energies that caused by the inner energies. The 8 benefits or the 5 signs arise through cultivating the unification of shamatha vipassana, but not during the intermittent stillness that focuses on a subtle object. Is the footnote helpful? Let's check that out. That's an interesting phrase, and it's a very auspicious footnote. It's number 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's
Ah,
long, but
it's all in some other language that's in
right.
gibberish. It reads, Soku. Wow, that's some weird stuff. Tier,
It's basically comparing
Supeto.
2 different
Yeah.
editions.
Okay, so let's take some shots at that. They arise through cultivating the unification of shamatha vipassana, all of these different experiences, but not during the intermittent stillness. So intermittent means occasional, right? Stillness that focuses on a subtle object, but not during the occasional stillness that focuses on a subtle object. That's a little vague, but okay. He concludes, when realization occurs, it's impossible for experiences not to do so as well. For experiences to occur. In other words, realization is that when you see clearly the essence of mind awareness, you will think that you should have recognized what was taught to be it from the first. Right? Why didn't I see that from the very beginning? Why didn't I recognize my mind as Buddha? Then your experiences of bliss are undefiled, natural great bliss, as opposed to defiled bliss earlier. Clarity is that sense that it's just vividly right there. Something you feel you could grasp in your hand. The it is the key, right? What is the it? It presumably is the essence of mind awareness. Non-conceptuality is untainted by even the smallest thoughts. Does that mean that there are no thoughts, or that they don't taint your experience? That is the arising of the non-duality of experience and realization. That's interesting. There's this framework of like understanding experience and realization as a description of the progression on the path, that one leads to the other, but this idea of the unification, the non-duality of them is interesting.
That's called itness.
Itness, that's right.
Well, you get
Itness.
the sense that there's sort of during the path you may encounter these experiences or nyams, but they're kind of they're temporary, obviously, and they're indications. It's like if you don't hold on to them, they're okay because they're an indication that you are doing practice, you know, in one sense. But it's not something to hold on to, because if you do that, then of course you're getting stuck. But it sounds like that at a certain point of realization, they just may be instead of it's a more of a connate thing, that they're naturally present with realization, and at that point they're not probably flaws. They're just kind of like part of the manifestation of realization.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting, or it's somewhat of a confusing thing. Is like we see in certain places that these qualities, bliss, luminosity, or clarity, and non-thought or non-conceptuality, are the nature of our mind. And then, it's like, well, is that the nature of our ultimate mind, true mind, or is that the nature of samsaric mind? And we see places where those are described as, or presented as, the qualities of the true nature of relative mind, like the Alaya Vijnana. But it's not clarified that it seems like those are also the qualities of the true nature of the true essence of mind as such, dharmata, etc., right? But that's not, often it's not made clear. But that seems to be what's happening here. We had defiled bliss and so forth as like these temporary level of experiences, and then we have when realization occurs, it's impossible for experiences not to do so as well, not to occur. So we have this odd quandary that has happened rarely in the history of Rime Shadra's 21 years of classes. We've actually made it through all the reading, and there's time left.
No, that's not
It's like,
possible.
that's not possible. I'm like,
You got to go to like 9:15, 9:30.
I know we got to be like racing to finish at the end. So I feel personally like very awkward and uncertain what to do. I've never encountered this, and any suggestions? Mary Beth,
I think we should spend the next 11 minutes discussing it.
discussing the 11 minutes. I like that. We're discussing what's the it?
What to do?
What to do? That's a good idea.
Right, if everybody puts a proposal out, it might take up 11 minutes.
Yeah. Well, we could just talk generally, like how's it going through this text? What do you think of this big, huge book? We are now, um, we're close. We're close, right? We have one more segment, one more semester coming up, which is the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. And we've gone through all of this material. Do we have it? Do you got it? Do you get it down? Can you explain, like, what is this book about? I don't know. We could look at the table of contents of the text. Might be interesting. Sort of like a little review. What have we been through? Or we could talk about the quote that I circulated. Did you guys like that quote? Look at your own mind. So why does he say look at your own mind? It's like mind your own business. Don't be looking at other people's minds. Don't be looking at for your neighbor's mind. Look at your own mind. Mind
Don't ponder
its
others.
faults, right? The slogan, right? Slogan. Mind itself does not exist. So when he says mind itself, does he mean like is it mind itself doesn't exist? Like as opposed to mind, there's mind itself? Or does he say mind doesn't, like leave out itself, just mind does not exist? It's, there's different types of mind. We come across all these different levels of mind, right? So there's mind as such. Is mind itself mind as such? Mind itself, Cynthia?
Well, since you brought up that particular quote, I just found that I have been part of my practice includes some nice pithy little instructions from Kempo Gongshar and some others. And there's one of them that right in the middle of it, and every time you talk about look at the mind, I always think of this particular line where he says, it isn't possible to see the suchness of mind, so give up any idea of seeing it.
That's great.
So it's like,
Does he I'm curious. So,
there's another line I can read.
but before that, was there anything before that?
Well, yes, there's three little short paragraphs before that. That's in the middle of the page.
Because like here, it's like the first step is to look at your mind, and then the second step is to realize that you can't look at your mind. So I'm wondering if that text you're looking at has that same sequence of like trying to look at, doing the exercise of looking
Yeah,
at it.
actually, okay, so yeah, it's the second paragraph. It says, at this time, stare directly at the ordinary mind, the clear awareness of the moment, unbound by compulsive and negative ideas. So there is that sense of, I guess, looking. Um, and then it says, very, very sweet actually, don't be sad when the mind moves or happy when it is still. And then, I mean, it's all classic, the same things we've talked about. Likewise, don't apply remedies to loosen or tighten your mind. Simply allow all to collapse and relax within the nature. And then he talks about, if thoughts wander and don't have to do this or that. But the line I loved really is just this statement of, you can't see it, so give up any idea of seeing it.
Yeah,
I
that's good.
remember when at Kempo at one of his teachings, I think had a brief like poem. He said, throughout the day and night, look at your mind. When you look at your mind, you don't see anything. When you don't see anything, let go and relax.
That's great. Yeah, throughout the day and night. I remember that one. That's nice. Thank you.
I think there's a song that has some of that in it too.
Yeah, yeah. Say it again, Daniel?
Throughout the night and day, look at your mind. When you look at your mind, you don't see anything. When you don't see anything, let go and relax.
That's the same thing. Look at your mind, you can't see it, and then what?
And then
Neil?
relax.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it has that nice phrase of he has relax. We don't really have that in this text. We have like something similar we'll come to in a minute
Well,
after
we
Neil.
have we have the whole rest in the certainty that you can't see it.
Yes, that's what I was. Yeah. So let's have Neil contribute, and then we'll come back to the text and continue.
So when you're not looking and not seeing, not finding, how is that different from simply, being blank-minded?
Yeah, being oblivious.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I like the periods of time when I am essentially oblivious, but I am often, at the end of those periods, I'm reminding myself that that's not meditation.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I think that the difference is you don't have the view.
I'm working on it. You know?
Yeah, what I mean is, if you're just oblivious, you're missing the view.
Well, aren't you not supposed to be having a view at that point when you are letting everything relax and dissolve? You're not supposed to be thinking about the view or articulating the view to yourself.
True, true.
But let's pursue that further, because like um, there's that phrase of resting in the view or cultivating the view or looking from within the view. And the view, there's different ways of interpreting the view. Like Neil just said, well, you're not supposed to be like thinking about anything. But so is the view like looking from the view? Does that mean that we're looking from the state of like a discursive um, understanding of the nature of X, Y, or Z? What does that phrase mean? Like, um, so Daniel says we're missing having the view in that experience. What does that mean? How
Like
about Rob and
what
then Cynthia?
Cynthia was talking about earlier, where we raised the bar on what constitutes, you know, certainty.
And
It's
say
like
more. Keep going.
it's like that. What once we've rested and what say like, okay, in my practice, I'm recognizing cognition. It's happening. There's cognition. So then I can just go into shamatha on. I'm certain that this mind has reflexive awareness. I have certainty on that, and then I don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just there, and
Right.
I can flash on it.
Right, so that's like sustaining the view or resting in the view,
Right.
settling into the view. And then from within that or with that or
To
along
the
with
next
that,
step. Yeah.
then just sort of spacing out and not like doing anything, right? And that's totally different than spacing out without understanding the so-called view, right? So when Neil and Daniel say, what is the difference, and it's whether you have the view or not, that doesn't mean like we're having like a discursive reminder of like, oh, well, everything is empty, and so I should space out, relax in that experience of emptiness. We're not doing that level of repeating the instruction, right?
I'm still not sure I'm getting the distinction. Because
Yeah,
my sense is that at the end of my period of spacing out obliviousness, whatever you want to call it, if I am energized, I am nourished, I am motivated and inspired, but I easily take that back and apply it to my limited understanding of the view in my day to day.
that's great. Cynthia.
Well, I would say that rather than using the term the view, it's really awareness that's either present or absent. And when we're in a state of oblivion or spacing out, we don't have awareness. We're not. We don't have the clarity.
Self-awareness.
You can have yeah, you can kind of just check out and be in some kind of state, but there's no awareness there. And I think that's the key distinction, and that's one that they warn about a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you've cultivated that, the uh, both the understanding of um, the nature of our awareness and the nature of like non-dual perception, you've cultivated that presumably through intellectual discussion and analysis to a point where you have an ability to like experience it. Maybe it's conceptual, but some sense of experiencing it. Then it's a matter of just reliving that experience while you're relaxing and not doing anything. It's like, spacing out doesn't have to be oblivion, right? It can be, as you said, very relaxing and energizing. Like you're not obsessing over X, Y, and Z as we often spend our time doing.
And why would you call it spacing out? I mean, I somehow the term spacing out, I think, just is you can relax. You can have a relaxed experience. But as soon as we start talking about spacing out, that's where I think the awareness has sort of checked out, has kind of been lost.
Yeah, it's like no, it's a period where you think there have been no thought. After the fact, you think there
Yeah,
have been.
yeah, that's what it's like. It's a funny thing, actually. You kind of come back and go like, where was I?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the question
So
is,
you
did
have
you?
the quality. So there's a quality of awareness, and when you're in that state, you're still seeing everything. When you're spacing out, all of a sudden you're like, oh, right, I forgot what I was doing. Or you're that's different. That it's that awareness quality. I would agree. Yeah, there's you know what's going on around you without without elaboration.
It's very, very helpful. Thank you, all of you.
So now we're over time,
Wasn't so hard to fill that time, was it?
but I want to do one more line in this thing I handed out just to make us even later. So that's okay. So we said, look at your own mind, right? And Kimbo Gongshar, and like this is standard. Like first you look, and then you realize that you're looking at something that doesn't exist in the way that we think things normally exist. And then this says this non-existent mind is the great wonder of the variety of appearance. So it's like first we look as if like we're looking internally at something, and then we realize we can't see anything, and the sense of inside and outside dissolves, and we realize that everything that we're experiencing is not different than the perception of that. Mind is merely appearance. And then it says that mind of all sentient beings is the wisdom of great bliss. So that mind that we all have that is non-existent but is inseparable from appearance is great bliss. Great line. Is the wisdom of great bliss, incomprehensible, complete non-thought, appearing as the nature of luminosity. Very wonderful. Cynthia?
I just wanted to say, doesn't that sort of answer that question you had about radiance?
Yes. But it says it in a less sort of clunky way, I think.
Yes, it's yeah, a
A
more poetic.
poetic. You could do that more poetic, and the poetry actually helps you disconnect from the reification process or the concept, right?
Well,
Interesting.
it also, in a way, it makes it. It seems like mind is merely appearance is sort of a non-dual way of saying,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
the total opposite of what we normally. Also, like it's a total flip around, right? Mind is merely appearance, huh?
right, yep. But it's a beautiful, yeah.
That's cool. Okay, let's dedicate. By this merit may all attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may it free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you. Be well. Stay sane. This
Thank you.
insanity going on around us. Be well. Good night.